Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the First Unitarian Society of Milwaukee's online worship service. I'm Reverend Dina McFeeters, and I'm honored to serve as Associate Minister. We welcome people of all genders, sexualities, ages, races, ethnicities, histories, and bodies. We welcome your mind, your heart, and your spirit. We welcome all that you are carrying with you today and all that your heart longs to set down. We'd like to pay a special welcome to guests joining us today. If you are visiting for the first time or joining us from afar, why don't you say hello in the chat and tell us where you're joining us from? I welcome you to our worship service by inviting you to repeat our mission after me. We gather to nurture the spirit, engage the mind, and inspire action. On this Father's Day Sunday, these opening words are called I Believe in Fathering by Evan Carville Zemer. I believe in fathering. I believe in the radical idea that men have the full human capacity to nurture. Hair bows and baseballs, cooking and creativity, tools and tiaras, camping and dancing, snuggles and shrieks of delight. Too many fathers don't believe in their own fathering. Too many are scarred by their own fathers to hear their heart say otherwise. Too many have known fathers who, faced with a quivering lip and tears, could only say, man up. Too many have known fathers who knew only yelling and hitting. Too many have known fathers who lost sight of their sacred role of protector and became tormentor. But I believe in fathering. When a human being gestates and gives birth, their brain changes permanently. A father's brain changes permanently too. Changes as he rocks his baby to sleep, delights in baby games, and soothes bumps and bruises. A father earns his new neurobiology. In a world where too many mothers hand their co-parent directions more specific than those given to the babysitter, where a father out with his kids is asked, "Are you babysitting?" And "Where's mom?" Where fathers are the punchline. I believe in fathering. I believe in the radical idea that men have the full human capacity to nurture. Whether their children come through birth, adoption, or fostering, through scouts, sports, Sunday school, or youth group. I've known too many gay dads, too many single fathers, too many men raising children others couldn't, to believe otherwise. I believe we all, especially our children, deserve to know that the human capacity to nurture belongs to every one of us. I believe in fathering. Let's return to our beloved sanctuary for the lighting of the flaming chalice, a symbol of Unitarian Universalism. We have a candle of life this morning for two births. I am happy to announce that members Krista and Teddy Jarzinski welcomed the birth of their daughter, Caroline, known as Lulu, Rose Jarzinski Monticelli, born on March 20th, 2021 at 10:06 p.m. Lulu weighed 9 pounds, 4 ounces. Parents and baby are all doing well. I am also happy to announce that members Amanda DeBoer and Andrew Body Spargo welcomed the birth of their daughter, Josephine Charlie DeBoer, born on June 6, 2021 at 5:37 a.m. Josephine weighed 7 pounds, 6 ounces. Parents, baby, and big sister Evelyn are all doing well. Congratulations. As is our custom in this church, whenever we have a birth, an adoption, or a death of our members, we light our candle of life. So today we light our candle of life in honor of Caroline, Lulu, Rose, Jarzinski, Monticelli, and Josephine, Charlie, DeBoer. As we enter into a time of spoken meditation, followed by silence, followed by singing Spirit of Life, I invite you to find a way wherever you are to ground and center yourself, whatever that means to you. Perhaps you'd like to put your feet on the floor, maybe find a way to lift your spine so you can breathe deeply. And find a resting place somewhere in your body and travel there with your attention. This Father's Day meditation is by Rod Richards. On this Father's Day, we recognize the vast spectrum of experience and the often complicated feelings that surround such a celebration. We honor those fathers and father figures in our lives who have loved, supported, encouraged, and instructed us, and we seek to share these gifts with others. We mourn with those who mourn the loss of a father, and fathers who mourn the loss of a child, whether separated by death or estrangement. We support those for whom this day brings pain and sorrow, those who suffered abandonment, neglect, or abuse. We support and celebrate the fathers in our midst who give of themselves to their children, recognizing all the strength and wisdom and stamina and love and time and honest introspection that fatherhood requires. We support those men who choose not to have children, yet who are present in loving and supportive ways to children, youth, and adults alike. And we seek to honor wherever we find ourselves today across this vast spectrum of experience, and to feel the compassion that embraces us within this silence.
Good morning. My name is Paul Kozadowski, and I'm happy to be your worship associate today. I hope you'll stop by the coffee hour after the service and say hello. On this Father's Day, I'd like to tell you about my dad, Hank Kozadowski, who turned 88 last month. On the evening of March 3rd, my dad was watching TV at home with my mom and sister. At around 10 p.m., he got up from his recliner, as he did every night, to turn on the little sconce lights over the fireplace. He caught his foot on a rug and fell. The resulting bruise on his thigh, a hematoma in medical speak, has put him through 3 separate surgeries. He's not been home since then, spending the last 3.5 months in various ICUs, hospital rooms, and rehabilitation centers. I could tell you about his personal struggles and triumphs since then, his display of tenacity, good spirits, Catholic-rooted faith. But the real story I want to tell starts earlier, on May 9th, 1961. That's the birthday of my sister Anne, born with Down syndrome. As was common then, doctors recommended that she be institutionalized at birth. My parents considered, then rejected that idea, and Anne has been a loving and beloved member of our family. She has held several jobs, had an active social life, and won scads of Special Olympics swimming medals. While some of her friends and classmates went on to live in group homes as adults, she has lived with my parents all her life. As she aged and faced other health issues, my dad, with the help of my sister, became her primary caregiver. And when she started to exhibit signs of Alzheimer's disease 3 years ago, he faced even greater challenges. Mood swings, unprovoked and unexplained weeping, bouts of sleeplessness, and the gradual disappearance of the Anne we knew and loved. My family stepped up to the challenge. My other sister and I stopped by to make meals, play games with Anne to keep her mind active, but it was my dad who woke up with Anne in the morning and put her to bed in the evening. Until March 3rd, when my dad's fall brought me into that caregiver role. Until then, I had no idea of the challenges involved in being a full-time caregiver for someone like Anne. The necessary patience and emotional fortitude, the heartache and occasional joys of being with her for hours every day. Living that relationship for a few months made me understand and feel the years of my father's sacrifice in a profound way. I'm a bit of an outlier in my family. I'm certainly not estranged, but our differences often make me feel like a satellite in orbit around a densely packed family star cluster. My time with Anne offered me a profound family connection, a sense of shared rootedness that I felt more keenly than any of the gatherings or rituals that often define family life. These 3.5 months have been wearying and frustrating, but they brought moments of tenderness and insight. As the Alzheimer's makes Anne's personality recede, my roots burrow deeper into our family history to hold on to memories. And as I live through my father's caregiving role, I feel the rootedness of our shared lives going back through the decades. When I started caring for my sister, the first words out of her mouth every morning, repeated several times while I was dressing and feeding her, were, "I hope I get to see Dad today." But as he drifted out of her day-to-day life, that impulse changed. She still loves seeing him and talking to him, but now her first words are to me when she says, "I'm glad you're here." It's a poignant thing to feel so needed, to be so rooted in someone else's daily life. But it's also powerful to feel a closer connection with my father. My roots perhaps are not as deep as his, but in the intensity of our shared lives of the past few months, I can feel them intertwine and grow in new directions.
Who I am today will not be who I am tomorrow, and who I am tomorrow will keep changing every day. And all the things I learned might fill my heart with joy or sorrow. And everything I learned might make me want to change my ways. Oh, there is nothing, no thing that ever stays the same. That is the one thing, one thing that life does guarantee. There is no one on earth, no one who knows what path their life will take, and no one knows what I will see as I keep becoming me. The family you were raised in does not dictate who you marry, and the country you were born in won't decide where you are buried, and all you once believed might leave you stranded on an island where the only way back home is to abandon it as lies. And there is nothing, no thing that ever stays the same. That is the one thing, the one thing that life does guarantee. There is no one on earth, no one who knows where their lives will be, what path their life will take, and no one knows what I will see as I keep becoming me, becoming me. I must stay open to the change, curious and free, and always ready to be rearranged. There is nothing that ever stays the same. That is the one thing that life does guarantee. There is no one on earth, no one who knows what course their life will take, and no one knows who I will be as I keep becoming me, as I keep becoming me, as I keep becoming me, as I keep becoming.
Thank you, Leah. Architects of our roots. My great-grandfather Siegler came to this country from Germany in 1870 when he was 15 years of age. He was a cooper by trade, mechanically inclined, worked with machinery with ease. My great-grandmother also came from Germany. They settled in Wisconsin and later at Winona, Minnesota, which was a German settlement at the time. Two of my great-grandfather's brothers were Lutheran ministers, one of whom was secretary for the Wisconsin Synod for many years. My great-great-great-grandfather Sanford was ordained a deacon by the first Methodist bishop to New England. Two of his sons became ministers, and three of his daughters married ministers. So reads my family history, written down by my paternal grandmother in her flowery script. If Grandma had not written down the family history, I would not know that my roots go back to several Lutheran and Methodist ministers and to a woman ancestor who came to Wisconsin in 1842 and founded a Presbyterian organization called the Bloomfield Church in her house. The Presbytery of Wisconsin held some of their first meetings in her home. On the other side of the family, if my mother had not carefully clipped and saved wedding notices and death notices from the Stillwater Daily Gazette, I wouldn't know much about my maternal family roots. If my sister and brother-in-law had not consulted with their children and then sent letters to the children's adoption agencies and foster parents, my nephew and niece wouldn't have had the opportunity to trace their roots to their birth parents. Many folks don't have a fully fleshed out family tree. Yet we are so curious about ancestry that Henry Louis Gates Jr.'s show, Finding Your Roots, is immensely popular. His research reveals sometimes joyful, sometimes painful family history, and the gaps in that history. Many African Americans are not able to trace their family history, not very far, due to slavery and separation of families. Looking at a roster of human beings owned by a white man is particularly heart-wrenching when the name on that record is your ancestor. Discoveries in a family tree, whether painful, unusual, or mundane, give people a different sense of their rootedness and thus their identity. Before the advent of personal computers, my mother was able to trace her family tree back to Archibald McFeeters, who came from Scotland to Bangor, Maine in 1771. Through her research, my mother found the area of Scotland he came from. And a couple of decades after her death, I was able to visit that place in Scotland on pilgrimage of sorts during my first sabbatical in 2006. The area was beautiful, and it bore an uncanny resemblance to the geography of where I was living at that time in northern New England. When we think of rootedness, we often think about the past. We trace our roots back through the family lineage if we can, and hopefully discover a few ancestors and relatives, and maybe a few stories. We wonder what their lives were like, why they made the choices they did, what we inherited from them. We will the mute page to speak. There are some interesting names in my maternal line: Florence Lemon, Thankful Mayo, and Sarah Stewart. Who were these women? All I know is that they bore and raised 6, 8, and 11 children, respectively, going back in time. Closer in time, my maternal grandmother, who died when I was 2, only had 2 children, one who died in infancy, and then my treasured mother. My maternal grandmother's sister, my great aunt, never married. I knew her, a strong woman who worked for a living. What a fun surprise to find her handwritten work history, complete with hourly wage and weekly earnings, listed on the photocopied page of wedding notices and death notices that my mom curated. As fascinating and frustrating as family trees can be, what do they mean for how we live now and where we want to send our roots? One of our worship associates noted during a worship associate retreat that when you look at a typical family tree diagram, your ancestors are up in the branches. Your children are at the base of the tree, close to the ground. And their as yet unborn descendants are the roots into the future that we can't see yet. What will they choose to do with their lives? How will they build their identities, communities, and connections? Where will their roots grow? Becoming who we are, choosing where and how to plant ourselves, comes from a mix of inheritance, situations, creativity, and reclamation. Potawatomi scientist, teacher, and author Robin Wall Kimmerer, in her book Braiding Sweetgrass, writes about planting sweetgrass to reclaim the native ecosystem and human culture in her chapter, Putting Down Roots. Summer day on the Mohawk River. Bend and pull, bend and pull. She calls to her granddaughter, standing waist deep in the grass. Her bundle grows thicker with every stoop of her back. She straightens up, rubs the small of her back, and tilts her head up to the blue summer sky, her black braids swinging in the arch of her back. Bank swallows twitter over the river. The breeze off the water sets the grasses waving and carries the fragrance of sweetgrass that rises from her footsteps. A spring morning 400 years later. Bend and dig, bend and dig. My bundle grows smaller with every stoop of my back. I drive my trowel into the soft ground and rock it back and forth. It scrapes against a buried stone, and I dig my fingers in to unearth it, cast the stone aside to make an apple-sized hole big enough for the roots. From the tangled bundle wrapped in burlap, my fingers separate out a single clump of sweetgrass. I set it in the hole, scoop soil around it, speak words of welcome, and tamp it down. I straighten up and rub the small of my aching back. The sunshine pours down around us, warming the grass and releasing its scent. Red stake flags flutter in the breeze, marking the outlines of our plots. In rows of 7 for 7 generations, we are putting roots in the ground, welcoming the sweetgrass back home. Plants are integral to reweaving the connection between land and people. A place becomes a home when it sustains you, when it feeds you in body as well as spirit. To recreate a home, the plants must also return. Sweetgrass has its own way of multiplying. Every shiny green shoot that pokes up above ground also produces a long, slender white rhizome, winding its way through the soil. All along its length are buds, which will sprout up and emerge into the sunshine. Sweetgrass can send its rhizomes many feet out from the parent. In this way, the plant could travel freely all along the riversides. This was a good plan when the land was whole. Those tender white rhizomes cannot make their way across a highway or a parking lot. When a patch of sweetgrass was lost to the plow, it could not be replenished by seed from outside. When Sky Woman first scattered the plants, sweetgrass flourished along this river, but today it is gone. Just as the Mohawk language was replaced by English and Italian and Polish, the sweetgrass was crowded out by immigrants. Losing a plant can threaten a culture in much the same way as losing a language. Without sweetgrass, the grandmothers don't bring the granddaughters to the meadows in July. Then, what becomes of their stories? Without sweetgrass, what happens to the baskets, to the ceremony that uses these baskets? Kimmerer continues, when I was young, I had no one to tell me that, like the Mohawks, Potawatomi people revere sweetgrass as one of the 4 sacred plants. No one to say that it was the first plant to grow on Mother Earth, and so we braid it as if it were our mother's hair to show our loving care for her. The runners of the story could not find their way through a fragmented cultural landscape to me. The story was stolen at Carlisle. In a big red book, the Indian Industrial School, Carlisle, Pennsylvania, 1879 to 1918, is a list of names, including Kimmerer's grandfather's name, who was taken from his family in Oklahoma at 9 years old and sent on the train across the prairies to Carlisle. She writes, he was one of the lost generation. All my life, I have felt that loss. What was stolen at Carlisle has been a knot of sorrow I've carried like a stone buried in my heart. I am not alone. That grief lives on in all the families of those whose names appear on the pages of that big red book. Stolen children, lost bonds, the broken link between land and people, between the past and the present, aches like a badly broken bone, still unknit. Grief, she continues, can be comforted by creation, by rebuilding the homeland that was taken. Sweetgrass is a healing medicine, a smudge that involves and invokes kindness and compassion, coming as it does from our first mother. And so we are here along the river, kneeling in the earth with the smell of sweetgrass on our hands. Friends, this weekend holds both Father's Day and the now federal holiday, Juneteenth. It's a time to think about roots, families, complicated, entwining history, freedom, and the devastating legacy of white supremacy. It's also a time to celebrate creativity, healing, and to nurture loving, liberating identities, sending new roots into the future. In the award-winning novel called The 30 Names of Night, author Zemer tells a story about 3 generations of Syrian Americans. The book jacket summarizes: 5 years after a suspicious fire killed his mother, a closeted Syrian American trans boy sheds his birth name and searches for a new one. He has been unable to paint since his mother's ghost began to visit him each evening. The only time he feels truly free is when he slips out at night to paint murals on buildings in the once thriving Manhattan neighborhood known as Little Syria. I want to read you a passage from the novel where the main character is reflecting on his maternal ancestry. It goes like this: 2 generations before you, our ancestors were nomadic. You used to tell me stories about my great-great-grandmother, the one who killed scorpions with her bare heels and slit the throats of the goats on Eid. You and Teta Bradra before you, and Teta's mother before her, my great-grandmother Wafa, daughter of the scorpion killer. You were the bearers of bravery in our family. You were the one who fought to save the neighborhood I'm now sneaking into to paint each night. But you failed to realize that America has only ever deemed certain heritages worth preserving. If the Lenape were forced from their ancestral home on the island of Manhattan, the eviction of Little Syria's impoverished immigrants is no surprise. And it's hard for me to imagine that things will ever be different. I haven't prayed since the day they slid you into earth. Your grave faces a copse of pines that separates the cemetery from the homes of rich families who don't want to see the dead and the grieving. We buried not a person, but a continent that day. We're made from clay after all, aren't we? And underground springs and threads of copper run in our veins. When this country asks me where I'm from, they aren't asking for the city on my birth certificate, but whose earth is in my blood. Friends, Father's Day and Juneteenth might be a good time to ask ourselves, whose earth is in my blood? What do my roots teach me? Who am I? And who do I want to become? Where do I want to plant myself and send my roots into the future? In Jupiter's novel, there is a beautiful scene in a bar where the main character's roots stretch and sigh into the soil of the community of his newly claimed identity. I will leave you with this beautiful passage from the book, a picture of roots giving wings. Sami pulls me onto the dance floor, and I don't protest, though I want to. I've become just like the white boys at middle school dances, the boys by the wall, earthbound boys, wings-severed boys with stiff bodies. There is nothing behind the door in my chest that should uncage the kind of feminine softness I should have, the kind you told me would settle into my chest and my hips. It never did. Sami dips his chest and lifts his hands, and he is not dancing, but trying to fly. He is testing his body in the wind, feeling the weight and breadth of it. My heart is a new bird throwing itself against the space he is taking up. There are no long-legged white girls around us, no pale, over-cologned boys snicker flirting with the bartender. Instead, all around us, there are brown and black bodies marked with glow paint and tattoos. There are micro minis and leather short shorts and calf-length dresses in pleated faux silk atop unshaven legs. There are bodies with breasts, with thighs, with scars, with canes, wearing high heels, wearing high tops, large bodies, small bodies, bodies that twirl and shake and fill the room. This is not dancing, but a becoming of winged creatures. The DJ turns the music down, and the room stills to listen. Even over the bass beat, the sound of the Ishe Aran next door is loud enough to make itself heard. The DJ has lowered the music out of respect, so that the call to prayer becomes part of the music. The room continues to dance as though this is simply another rhythm to move one's body to. Once, a friend of yours from Marrakesh played us a recording of the Adhan from the streets of the old Medina. She said it reminded her that, no matter what she was worrying about, life was fleeting. And one day, none of the fears that plagued her would matter at all. I liked that about the Adhan, that a sound could both remind me that I was going to die and comfort me with the reminder that I was still alive, that it could remind me of the ways my ancestors touched their foreheads to the earth, that a single sound could tap that ancient place in my bones and make it sing like a plucked string. Then the Adhan is over, and I am swimming in the music. I paint the space around me with my body. I think of the last time I used my hands to make something beautiful. As long as my body was not for myself, I stopped allowing myself the luxury of wanting. But here, in this space that smells of sweat and sage and cigarette smoke, anything seems possible, even desire. I bend and untangle and step out of my body, lightening myself into this swollen room where boys like me are arcing and vaulting our unruly bodies, shaking the wet newness from our wings.
For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. Oh, for each each child that's born. A morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. Oh, for each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings, and we are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage, fathers of time, daughters of dust, and the sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy, brothers of love, lovers of life, and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth, keepers of faith, makers of peace, and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers. We are our grandfather's dreamings, and we are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage, fathers of time, daughters of dust, and the sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy, brothers of love, lovers of life, and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth and keepers of faith. We are makers of peace and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers. We are our grandfather's dreamings, and we are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are one. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings, and we are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage.
Thank you, Issei Barnwell, and last year's General Assembly Choir. Thank you all so much for your generosity. Pledging is the core of our church's practice of generosity, and we are also grateful for additional gifts to support our ministry. And thank the folks out there who are appreciating this online ministry and supporting it by texting 73256 with the message "Give to you," or giving on our website. Your gifts help us continue to provide this ministry. We also share the plate with an organization each month. The nonprofit Nehemiah Project is our summer Share the Plate recipient. With 2 facilities in Milwaukee, the Nehemiah Project works with teens and young men, 13 to 20 years old, who have served their sentence and are preparing to return to their families. Its mission is to promote the physical and emotional well-being of youth through psychological, educational, leadership, and transitional living services in a residential community. They accept clothing items, furniture, financial donations, and offer volunteer opportunities. To make a donation directly to the Nehemiah Project, please visit their website. They also accept donations over the phone. You can see all these options on your screen now, and they will live on in the YouTube comments section of this video after worship is over. Thank you so much for giving right now or when you come back later. Your support keeps us and our community partners going. Thank you. These closing words are by Leslie Takahashi. We bring into our hearts all those who have gone before us, all those whose living in this world has prepared the soil for our living, all those whose being has enabled our being. Let us also remember those whose existence is seated in our lives today. Not only those who are our physical descendants, but also those whose spirits inherit the love we sow, the hope we reap, the promise we harvest. And may those of us whose religious inheritance is freedom never rest until all who wish to be its children are sheltered. May it be so.
We are going, heaven knows where we are going. We know within, and we will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. Whoa, yeah, yeah. Whoa, yeah, yeah.